Hello everyone and welcome to the new session of the biology lecture series, and today we'll be studying the chapter nutrition. So this topic is from the class 10th NCERT science book. Okay, so today I'll be first introducing you to the topic nutrition. Alright, so let's start with the lecture. So what is nutrition? We have to understand first. What is the definition of nutrition? So we use this term in our day-to-day life, nutrition. So how can we define nutrition? So nutrition is a process of intake as well as utilization of the nutrients by an organism. So this is known as nutrition. So what you do while you eat the food, it is known as intake of food or ingestion of food. Alright, so what is nutrition? Intake of the food and then utilization of that food for energy. And that energy is then used for carrying out various metabolic processes, okay, such as it is used in locomotion, all right, and to carry out day-to-day activities. It is also used in the reproduction, okay. So nutrition in very simple terms can be defined as the intake of the food and then utilization of the food or the nutrients to generate energy by an organism is known as nutrition. Now, in the process of nutrition, what happens? There is a breakdown of the nutrients into smaller molecules. Okay, so the complex, you can say, the complex molecules or the complex food or complex material, it is broken down into simpler molecules or smaller molecules. And then after these molecules are broken down into smaller molecules, then they are absorbed inside the body. And this absorption is also very necessary. Without this absorption, there will be no energy generation. All right. So there is an ingestion of the food. Ingestion of the food means intake of the food through mouth. Okay. Now, after ingestion of the food, what happens? There is a breakdown of the food, and the food, provides us nutrition and the energy. Okay. Now, it contains different type of nutrients in varying amounts according to the need of our body. So, food, it contains different type of nutrients. So, nutrients, can be of two types, micronutrients and macronutrients. All right. So, this food, they contain nutrients in different amounts. Okay. And that nutrients provides us energy. Okay. So in nutshell, what we can say, what is nutrition? So nutrition is the first, you can say, intake. So you have to remember these terms. First, you have to say it is the intake of the food. And then second, you have to remember utilization of the food. And what happens during the process of nutrition? Breakdown of the nutrients into, or breakdown of complex food into smaller molecules. So you can write the complex molecules. They are broken down into the simpler or smaller molecules. All right, clear? So finally, example. One of the example is of a complex food can be, you can say, starch or any other carbohydrate which is broken down into glucose. Okay, and glucose provides us energy. So this is known as nutrition. Now, what are nutrients? So let's understand now what are nutrients, what is the definition of nutrients. So nutrients are substances that are required by our body, or you can say that is required by humans or any other living organism for its growth, repair, work, and the maintenance of the body. Okay, so nutrients, what is the role of these nutrients? These nutrients are involved in the growth. They help the living organism, okay, to grow, and repair of the cells and working of the cells, as well as the maintenance of the body parts. So this is the role of the nutrients. Now, different type of nutrients, or you can say example of different type of nutrients are carbohydrate, fat, proteins, vitamins, and minerals. So these are different type of nutrients. These nutrients, okay, carbohydrate, fat, proteins and all, these can also be called as substrate. Okay, instead of nutrients, you can also call them substrates, which provide us energy. Now, our daily energy need may vary according to our occupation, the age of the organism, the sex of the organism, means the organism is male or female, and under some specific conditions also, the energy demand varies. So according to the occupation, what does this mean? So if a human being or a living organism is doing an occupation that requires physical work, okay, that require a lot of physical work or labor work, then what happens? The energy demand or the energy need will be very high. Okay. Similarly, if we consider the age of the organism, then the metabolism, okay, it varies according to the age. So, in the younger people, the rate of metabolism is very high. All right. And in older people, the metabolism is slow. So, the energy production is also slow. And let's talk about the sex of the organism. So, it also depends whether the organism is male or it is female. Now, under some specific conditions also, the energy demand varies. All right. What are those specific conditions? It can be related to the environment, okay, or the occupation also, okay, the kind of activity which you are doing. So, energy need or the energy demand depends on these factors. Now, there are several modes of nutrition on the basis of which organisms are classified as follows. Okay. Now, according to the basis of nutrition, means how they acquire nutrition. Okay. Here you can say how they acquire nutrition. On the basis of how they acquire nutrition, there are two kinds of organism. First one is autotrophic and second one is heterotrophic. So, autotrophic organisms are those organisms which are able to synthesize their own food. All right. And what are heterotrophs? So, hetero means different. So, these organisms, they depend on other organisms or other living things for nutrition. And they are not able to synthesize their own food. And you can also say they depend on other organisms for nutrition. They depend on other organisms for nutrition. Okay, these are known as heterotrophic organism. Now, let's talk about first autotrophic organism. So you can break this term auto and trophic. Okay, so this autotrophic term is made up of two terms. So auto means self and trophic means food. So these organisms can prepare their own food. So they have some mechanisms which allow them to capture the sunlight and they can prepare their food by themselves. So this is known as autotrophic mode of nutrition. So how can we define again autotrophic mode of nutrition? It is a mode of nutrition in which organisms prepare their own food. Okay. And what happens in autotrophic nutrition? Inorganic molecules like carbon dioxide and water. So these are converted into organic molecules. So simply you can say the inorganic molecules are converted into organic molecules. And what kind of organic molecules? Carbohydrates, okay, and some other organic molecules also like proteins and fats and all, okay, but usually carbohydrates are formed. So during photosynthesis also, you must be knowing glucose molecules are produced, which is a kind of carbohydrate, okay. Then later carbohydrate can be converted into other kinds of organic molecules. And what happens? What is the requirement for autotrophic organism? Presence of sunlight and chlorophyll is required to carry out the autotrophic mode of nutrition. All right. Example of an autotrophic organisms are green plants. So green plants, they can carry out photosynthesis. Okay. These green plants, they carry out photosynthesis, and these green plant contain what? They contain the chlorophyll molecules. So chlorophyll is a photosynthetic pigment. Okay, it is a photosynthetic pigment that captures the sunlight. Okay, and it can then carry out the process of photosynthesis. And what happens in the process of photosynthesis? What are the substrate? Carbon dioxide, okay, and water. These are the substrates for photosynthesis. And what is produced? Organic molecules such as carbohydrates are produced, and along with it, oxygen is also evolved during the process of photosynthesis. And what else is required? Sunlight as well as chlorophyll is also required by the autotrophic organisms. Okay, some other examples of autotrophic organisms can be photosynthetic bacteria. Okay, or you can say cyanobacteria also. Cyanobacteria, it can also carry out photosynthesis. Cyanobacteria is also known as blue-green algae. Now, autotrophs are further categorized as photoautotrophs and chemoautotrophs. Now, what are photoautotrophs? So, those organisms which utilize sunlight for preparing their food. Okay, so they utilize sunlight. So, photo means light. Okay, and autotroph, you already know what is autotroph. So, these organisms, they need sunlight, or they convert sunlight into chemical energy. All right. Examples are green plants and photosynthetic bacteria. Or you can also say cyanobacteria or blue-green algae. And what are chemoautotrophs? So these organisms, they utilize chemical energy for preparing their food. That's why they are known as chemoautotrophs. Okay. So they break down the chemical molecules such as sulfide. Okay. So examples are sulfur oxidizing and nitrogen fixing bacteria. So sulfur oxidizing bacteria, what they do? They obtain the energy from sulfide. Okay, they obtain the energy by breakdown of the sulfide. And okay, example is thiobacillus. So thiobacillus is an example of sulfur oxidizing bacteria. Okay, and you can write thiobacillus is a bacteria which utilizes sulfide for the generation of energy. Similarly, nitrogen fixing bacteria such as azotobacter. Okay, azotobacter is a kind of nitrogen fixing bacteria. Clostridium also. Clostridium is also a nitrogen fixing bacteria. So these bacteria, okay, utilizes the chemical energy, okay, for preparing their food, or you can say they obtain the energy from the chemical molecules. Now, another mode of nutrition was heterotrophic. So hetero, again, it's made up of two terms. One is hetero, which means different, and trophic means food. Now, it is the mode of nutrition in which organisms derive their food from some other animals or plants. All right, so they are dependent on other organisms for nutrition, and they cannot prepare their own food. An example of heterotrophic organisms are human beings. Okay, clear? So heterotrophs now can be further characterized into herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, and detritivores. And how they are characterized, on which basis they are characterized? Depending on the nature of the food they consume. All right, so first let's talk about the herbivores. So herbivores, these are animals which eat only plants, for example, cow, goat, okay, and some other animals. Carnivores, what are carnivores? So they feed on flesh of other animals. Example can be lion and vulture. Then let's talk about omnivores. So omnivores are those organisms that feed or that consume plants and animals, both plants and animals. Example can be dog and humans. Okay, they eat plant-based product also, and they eat animal-based product also, such as meat. Now, detritivores. So detritivores, what they feed on? They feed on detritus. And what is detritus? Dead organic remains. All right. So these detritivores, okay, they feed on detritus or dead organic matter, you can say, or dead organic remains. Example of detritivore organisms are earthworm. All right. So these detritivores are also very important. They have a lot of ecological importance because they consume the dead organic remains and they clean the environment. All right. Now let's move on. Next category is sanguivores. So these feed on the blood. So you must have heard about leech. So the leech sucks blood. It can suck blood from the human skin also and some other living organisms also. And female mosquitoes. Okay, so usually the mosquitoes, they also feed on the blood, and usually these mosquitoes are female. So female mosquitoes only feed on the blood, and the male mosquitoes, they feed on some other food materials. Now next category is frugivorous. So these feed on fruit. Example is parrot. And then last one is insectivores. So these organisms, they feed on insect. Examples are bats. So bats are insectivorous. They feed on insects. Now, on the basis of mode of feeding, organisms are characterized as, okay, first is holozoic. So holozoic, they ingest mostly solid, but sometimes liquid food also. Example is amoeba and human. So humans are also holozoic. Now next is saprotrophic. So saprotrophic, they absorb organic matter from dead and decaying organisms, which with the help of their enzymes. So saprotrophic organisms, okay, such as fungi. Okay, so mostly fungi are saprotrophic. So these have enzymes. They secrete certain enzymes that help them absorb the organic matter or the dead and decaying organic matter. So these organisms known as saprotrophic organisms or saprotrophs. Now, third one is parasitic. So these organisms derive their nutrition from other living plants or animals. For example, Plasmodium, roundworms. Okay, so Plasmodium and roundworms, they are parasitic and they also causes lot of disease. Okay, they derive nutrition from other living plants or animals. Okay, so this is very important. The host should be living. Okay, and they usually cause diseases in living organism. Now, nutrition can be divided into two categories on the basis of the occurrence. Okay, now here we are characterizing nutrition on the basis of the occurrence. First is nutrition in plant and second is nutrition in animals. Okay. Now, plants, we know they are autotrophic in nature. They can synthesize their own food by the process of photosynthesis, and they can convert the light energy into chemical energy. They convert light energy into what? Chemical energy. And this chemical energy is further converted into carbohydrates and all. Okay. Now, they prepare their own food, hence they are called as producers. Okay, so you have to remember this term. Plants are producers. They produce the food which are eaten up by the consumers. So one are producers, one category of living organism, others are consumers, which feed on what? Producers. Now, these plants, they contain green pigment called as chlorophyll. So chlorophyll is the photosynthetic pigment that helps in the photosynthesis. So this chlorophyll pigment, it entraps the solar energy, okay, in the form of what? Photons. So solar energy is present in the form of photons, and this energy is absorbed by the photosynthetic pigment known as chlorophyll. Alright, and then when the energy is absorbed by the chlorophyll, it is then converted into chemical energy in the form of food, and the process is known as photosynthesis. We have already discussed about photosynthesis in the beginning of this lecture. So carbon dioxide and water, they combine to form what? Glucose molecule. And in this process, sunlight and chlorophyll is also used up, and in the end, oxygen is also produced as a byproduct. Now, let's talk about photosynthesis. The synthesis of organic compounds like glucose from simple inorganic molecules like carbon dioxide and water by the cells of the green plants. So photosynthesis occurs in green plants because they contain chlorophyll. Having chlorophyll in the presence of sunlight is called as photosynthesis. So this is a very simple definition of photosynthesis. Now let's talk about the equation of photosynthesis. Alright, so this is the equation for photosynthesis. Now 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, they combine with 12 molecules of water, and in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll, what happens? A glucose molecule is synthesized, C6H12O6, this is the glucose molecule, and along with it, 6 molecules of oxygen is produced as a byproduct, and water is also produced. 6 molecules of water are also produced. Okay, so this is the equation for photosynthesis. Okay, so substrate here are, these are the substrate. These are inorganic molecules. Alright, then we have the sunlight and chlorophyll. These are known as the photosynthetic vessel, and then we have the products. These are the products. And you must be knowing that photosynthesis is a process in which oxygen is evolved. Okay, and the process of photosynthesis helped to convert the reducing environment which was present in the primitive earth into oxidizing environment. Okay, now photosynthesis is a two-step process, or you can say photosynthesis, it takes place in 2 phases. Okay, first one is the light reaction and second one is the dark reaction. So in light reaction, what happens? What are the product of light reaction? So ATP, NADPH2 and oxygen, these are produced in the end of the light reaction. Or you can also say these are the products of the light reaction. Okay, and these products, okay, ATP and NADPH2, so these are also known as reducing equivalents. Okay, so ATP and NADPH2, which are also known as reducing equivalents, these are used in the dark reaction, or you can also say dark phase. And what happens during the dark reaction? There is actual synthesis of the carbohydrate molecule. So here what happens? Both ATP and NADPH are utilized in the dark reaction, and carbon dioxide is converted into glucose. Okay, and this is known as what? This is known as carbon dioxide fixation or carbon dioxide assimilation. Okay, carbon dioxide fixation or carbon dioxide assimilation. Clear? Now, photosynthesis requires what? Photosynthesis required, first of all, the substrate, carbon dioxide and water, and it also requires sunlight and the chlorophyll. Okay, so these are also important for carrying out the process of photosynthesis. So sunlight is captured. Okay, it is captured by what? Chlorophyll. All right, and then light energy is converted into chemical energy. Now let's talk about the sunlight first. So for plants, sun is the basic source of the radiant energy, and plant utilize the light in the visible region of solar spectra, okay, which is known as the electromagnetic spectrum, which come under the range of 390 to 780 nanometer. All right, this is clear. What does this mean? This means that plant utilize or plant can photosynthesize in the visible region. All right. They can photosynthesize, or you can say they absorb the light in the visible region, which is from 390 nanometer to 780 nanometer. Okay, so plants can absorb in this range, in the visible range of the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, so electromagnetic spectrum is very huge. Okay, so a part of electromagnetic spectrum is the visible region or the visible spectra, which is from 390 to 780 nanometer. So in this range, plant can absorb and it can carry out the photosynthesis. Here you can see the electromagnetic. So this is the image showing you the electromagnetic spectrum. Electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, here you can see this is the visible spectra, and it is present between what? UV spectra and the infrared radiation. Okay, so visible region is present between the UV and the IR infrared region, and it is from, you can say, 390 or 380 to 780 or 760 nanometer. Okay, and the visible region consists of white light, and this white light is made up of mixture of 7 lights. What are these 7 lights? These are violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. And together what they make? They make VIBGYOR. Okay, so these 7 lights together, they form the VIBGYOR, which is the part of the visible spectra. Now, what is this visible region? How can you define it? So the visible spectra of the, or you can say the visible region of the electromagnetic spectra is known as visible region. All right, this is clear. So this is the region which is perceived by the human eye. That's why it's known as visible. Why it is called visible? Because this is the region which is perceived by human eye. Okay, means we can see in this region. This region is perceived by the human eye, and this region is also, okay, absorbed by the chlorophyll pigment. Okay. Now, the maximum photosynthesis or the maximum photosynthetic rate is seen in the red region. So you can see the red region, okay, it was around 760 nanometer. Okay, so the wavelength is very high, but the energy is very low. But still, maximum photosynthesis occurs in the red region because the absorption of the energy present in the red region is very high. Okay, so you can say the absorption of energy is high. You can say absorption of energy present in the red light is very high and the loss is very less. That's why the photosynthetic rate is maximum in the red region. Okay, so you must be a little bit thinking that in blue region why the photosynthesis rate is very high, although it has higher energy. But what happens in the blue region or the blue light, when the plants are exposed to the blue light, the absorption of energy, okay, is not that much, and the most of the energy is wasted. That's why in the blue region the photosynthesis rate is not maximum. Okay, red region or the red light, although it has lower energy than the blue light, but the absorption of the energy present in the red light is more as compared to the blue light. All right. Now, but whereas there is minimum photosynthesis in the green region. Why? Because the green parts of the plant, they reflect whole of the green light. That's why the leaves appear green, because they reflect the green light and the rate of photosynthesis is minimum. I would like to also mention that how can you measure the rate of photosynthesis? By oxygen evolution. Okay, so you have to measure the rate of photosynthesis. Okay, how you can measure the rate of photosynthesis? By oxygen evolution. If the rate of oxygen evolution is high, means photosynthesis is high. So this is one of the methods for measuring the rate of the photosynthesis. So when the plants are exposed to red light, rate of oxygen evolution will be very high, and you can say the photosynthesis rate is very high. Now next, okay, essential element is chlorophyll, or substance is chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is very important. So these are green pigments present in the chloroplast. So where is chlorophyll present? Chlorophyll is present in the organelle known as chloroplast, and they are found in green leaves. Okay, so this chlorophyll pigment, it is green in color. There are various type of chlorophyll: chlorophyll A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, chlorophyll A is the primary photosynthetic pigment, and it is green in color. That's why it gives leaves green color. And chlorophylls are present in the chloroplast. So these chlorophyll, they are present in the green leaf in a maximum amount, as well as in other green aerial parts of the. So wherever there will be green parts, their chlorophyll will be present. Now there are 6 different types of chlorophyll. These are chlorophyll A, B, C, D, and E. All right. And the primary photosynthetic pigment is chlorophyll A. All right. Rest are accessory. And there in bacteria, you have bacteriochlorophyll. Okay. Now among them, chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B are the most commonly occurring chlorophyll. Okay. So chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B, these are the most commonly occurring chlorophyll in the living organisms which carry out photosynthesis. Now, beside chlorophyll, certain other pigments are also present. Okay, and these are known as secondary photosynthetic pigments or accessory photosynthetic pigments. Okay, these are known as accessory photosynthetic pigments. Clear? Now, carotenes. One of them is carotenes. So carotenes are orange in color. Okay, example is carrot. So carrots, you know, are orange in color, and they contain the accessory pigment carotenes, which give it orange color. Now another type of accessory pigments are xanthophyll. So these are orange yellow in color, and these pigments are present in maize. Now the third category is phycobilins. Okay, so phyco is term related to algae. Okay, now they are of different colors like red and violet, and these are present where? In red algae. Okay, these are also present in blue-green algae and brown algae. Now phycobilins, how can you define phycobilins? Phycobilins are water soluble, and they can improve the solar energy absorption during photosynthesis. Now phycocyanin, phycoerythrin, and L-phycocyanin, these are the 3 types of phycobilins. Okay, so phycocyanin and L-phycocyanin, these are present in cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria, these are also known as the blue-green algae, and they also carry out photosynthesis. So phycocyanin and L-phycocyanin, these are present in the cyanobacteria. And phycoerythrin, okay, phycoerythrin is present in red algae, and it is red in color. Okay, so the color of the red algae is basically because of the presence of a red color pigment known as phycoerythrin. Okay, phycocyanin, this is the blue color pigment. Okay, this is a blue color pigment. Now let's talk about the raw materials for the photosynthesis. We have already discussed, you can say raw materials, or you can also say substrate for photosynthesis. The first one is carbon dioxide, which is very important. Then we have the water, and then stomata is also required. Okay, what is the role of stomata? Stomata help in the gaseous exchange. Okay, it helps in the gaseous exchange, means exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen. So carbon dioxide, okay, it is absorbed from the atmosphere, and then oxygen is released back to the environment. So stomata is also very important. Now, again, let's talk about carbon dioxide first. So in terrestrial plant, they obtain carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, okay, through what? Through the small openings present on the leaves that are known as stomata. So stomata, they're present in the epidermis of the leaves and they help in the gaseous exchange. And carbon dioxide is absorbed or obtained, okay, through the atmosphere, from the atmosphere through stomata. Now, let's talk about stomata. So what are stomata? Stomata are the small pores present on the surface of the leaves. Okay. And they help in the exchange of gases as well as water. What gases? Carbon dioxide and water. And it also helps in the uh, exchange of the water. Okay. So water is lost through stomata in the form of water vapor. Okay. And this loss of water in the form of water vapor, this is known as transpiration. The stomata is also involved in transpiration. All right. So these are the two roles of stomata. First is the exchange of gases and second is the transpiration. Now again stomata. So stomata opening is guarded by the presence of the guard cell. The stomata is surrounded by the guard cell which are kidney shaped. Okay. So if you talk about dicot, so in dicots, the guard cell are kidney shaped. So it looks like this. You can say kidney shaped or bean shaped. So these are the guard cells. Okay. And in monocots, they are dumbbell shaped. Okay. If you talk about guard cell of the monocots, these are dumbbell shaped. Okay. Dumbbell shaped. Now, stomata, the opening of this stomata known as stoma, it is guarded by the presence of the guard cell, which are kidney shaped in the dicots. Okay. And the aquatic plants, they obtain the carbon dioxide dissolved in the water. So terrestrial plants, they obtain the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, whereas the aquatic plants, they obtain carbon dioxide which is dissolved in the water, and their general body surface, from what? From their general body surface. So their entire body surface can absorb the carbon dioxide which is dissolved in water. So because of this, they perform more photosynthesis than the terrestrial plants. Okay, because here the absorption of carbon dioxide is more, so more carbon dioxide is fixed. Okay, and more photosynthesis is being done in the aquatic plants. Now, again, this is the structure showing you the stomata. So this is the open stomata and this is the closed stomata. And stomata, okay, is surrounded by the guard cell. Okay, and the guard cell are bean shaped or kidney shaped in dicots and dumbbell shaped in monocots. This is the inner wall of the guard cell, which is usually thicker. Okay, and here you can see the stomatal pore. Stomatal pore is also known as stoma. And this is how the open stomata looks. This is how the closed stomata looks. Now, when the guard cells, when they are turgid, so turgid means swollen. Okay, turgid means swollen, means it is filled with water. When they are turgid, then the stomata is open. When they are flaccid, means there is no water, then the stomata is closed. Okay. So these are flaccid guard cell, and when the guard cell are flaccid, then the stomata is closed. Okay, clear? Now water. Water is also very essential. A plant absorbs water from the soil by the process of osmosis. Now this water is transported to leaves by a special type of tissue called as xylem. Okay, so xylem, this is known as the vascular system. Okay, So water is transported through the xylem. All right, and water is also very essential, and it is absorbed by the process of osmosis. All right. Now, what is osmosis? Osmosis is the, you can say, the transfer or the transport of the solvent molecules. So what happens during osmosis? Okay, there is a transport of water, or you can say the solvent molecules. Okay, from a region of high water concentration to a region of low water concentration. Okay, this is clear. All right, so these were the substrate that are required for the photosynthesis. First one was the carbon dioxide, second is the water, and the stomata is also required for carrying out the efficient photosynthesis. Now let's talk about the compensation point. Okay, so I'm introducing you to another term which is known as compensation point. Now this is very important. You have to concentrate here. So how can we define compensation point? So here, the plants, they utilize carbon dioxide during the photosynthesis. You already know for photosynthesis, carbon dioxide is required. But what happens? The intensity of the light at which the amount of carbon dioxide used during photosynthesis becomes equal to the amount of carbon dioxide released during the respiration. This is known as compensation point. So how can we define compensation point? All right, the light intensity or the intensity of the light at which the carbon dioxide which is used, or you can say carbon dioxide which is fixed or which is assimilated during photosynthesis, okay, becomes equal to the carbon dioxide released. So, you know, during respiration, carbon dioxide is released and oxygen is used up. Okay, so the amount of carbon dioxide used during photosynthesis equal to the amount of carbon dioxide released during respiration. So you have to remember here, we are talking about two phenomena here. First is photosynthesis, second is respiration. Okay, so this point is known as the compensation point. Okay, and this compensation point usually takes place at low light intensity. So at low light intensity, photosynthesis rate is low because of the low light intensity. And what happens at low light intensity? The amount of carbon dioxide which is used is equal to the amount of carbon dioxide which is released during the respiration in plants. Okay, so because of this, what happens? The rate of photosynthesis is equal to the rate of respiration. All right, or you can also say because of or at compensation point, there is no gaseous exchange. Okay, there is no gaseous exchange at compensation point. So here, what are the points you have to remember? First, it happens at the low light intensity. And low light intensity is when during the morning time or during the evening hours. Okay. And then what you have to remember? You have to remember two phenomena, photosynthesis and respiration. And then you already know during photosynthesis, carbon dioxide is used, it is fixed. And then during respiration, the carbon dioxide is released. And the amount of carbon dioxide used is equal to the amount of carbon dioxide released, means there is no exchange of gases. And the rate of photosynthesis is equal to the rate of respiration. Okay, so this is known as compensation point, the intensity of light at which the carbon dioxide used is equal to the carbon dioxide released during respiration. Now let's talk about the site of photosynthesis. Where does photosynthesis take place? Okay, so the site of photosynthesis is different in prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So prokaryotes, these are primitive organisms, okay, and they doesn't contain a true nucleus. So we can say no true nucleus is present. Okay. Prokaryotes are primitive organisms. They have very simple forms. Eukaryotes, these are those organisms that contain true nucleus, as well as they have membrane bound organelles also. Okay. So they have membrane bound organelles also. Whereas the prokaryotes, they don't have any nucleus, true nucleus, and they also don't have membrane bound organelles. So in prokaryotes, what is the site of photosynthesis? So photosynthesis occurs in the lamellar chromatophores. All right. Now these chromatophores, these are also known as pseudo-organelle. Pseudo means false. They are also known as pseudo-organelles, and they contain carotenoids and the bacteriochlorophyll. So these are also a kind of photosynthetic pigments which are involved in photosynthesis. Okay. So in prokaryotes, photosynthesis occurs in lamellar chromatophores. All right. Now in eukaryotes, the photosynthesis occur in chloroplasts. So plants, okay, they are eukaryotic organisms. Okay. And the site of photosynthesis is chloroplast. And chloroplasts contain what? It consists of the photosynthetic pigment known as chlorophyll. Okay. Here an exception is fungi. So fungi is also a eukaryote, but in fungi, chlorophyll is absent. It lacks chlorophyll. And because of this, no photosynthesis occur. Because we have already discussed that for photosynthesis, chlorophyll is very essential. It absorbs the light energy in the form of photons, and then it converts light energy into chemical energy. Now, in higher plants, chloroplast is the main site of photosynthesis. This already we have discussed. And chloroplast is a type of a plastid. And which kind of plastid? Green plastid. Why it is green? Because it contains the photosynthetic pigment chlorophyll, which is green in color. Okay. Now, plastids were first observed by Haeckel. Okay. Now, let's talk about the plastids now. The plastids are of three types on the basis of pigments present in them. Okay. First is leucoplast. So, leucoplasts are white in color. They are found in the underground parts and they lack the colored pigments. Okay. So, no pigments are present in leucoplast. And what is the function of the leucoplast? They help in the storage of the protein. So if they store protein, then they are known as aleuroplast. If they store oil, they are known as eleoplast. If they store starch, then they are known as amyloplast. Okay, so leucoplast, you can say they are of three types: aleuroplast, eleoplast, and amyloplast. Then second one is the chromoplast. Okay, so these are the plastids that are not green in color. They have some other colors, okay, other than green color. And what kinds of color? They can be bright red, orange, or yellow in color. And these are usually found in the aerial parts of the plant. Okay, so chromoplast, they don't contain the chlorophyll pigments. They contain some other pigments, okay, which give them bright red, orange, or yellow color. And these pigments can be carotenoids, or these can be xanthophyll. Okay. Now, next category is chloroplast. So, chloroplast, we have already discussed, they contain the green pigment known as the chlorophyll. Okay. That's why it is known as that's why they are green in color and they are known as green plastid. And chloroplasts were first discovered by Schimpner. Now, again, let's talk about the chloroplast now in detail because we are studying photosynthesis and chloroplast is involved in the photosynthesis. Now, number of chloroplasts is variable in different species of the plant. In lower plants such as algae, so algae is also included under the kingdom Plantae. It is also a kind of the plant which contains chlorophyll pigment. So algae is a type of a lower plant, okay, and the number of chloroplasts in algae can be from 1 to 2. Now, if we talk about the higher plants, their number varies from 40 to 100, okay, per palisade cell. Okay, now you have to understand what is palisade. So you must be knowing about the mesophyll cells. So mesophyll cells, they are of two types. First is the spongy mesophyll cell. Okay, and second one are the palisade mesophyll cells. So spongy mesophyll cells, okay, they have lot of gaps in them. Okay, they have lot of spaces or air spaces. They call them air spaces. Okay, and because of that, or because of the presence of the air spaces, the gaseous exchange can take place. Next one is the palisade. So palisade, okay, mesophyll cells, they usually contain more number of the chloroplast. Okay, higher number of chloroplasts are present in palisade, although chloroplasts are also present in the spongy cells, but they are less in number. More number of chloroplasts are present in the palisade cells. Okay, so we can say palisade cells are involved in the photosynthesis. So majorly we can say palisade cells are involved in photosynthesis. Now chloroplasts are also available in variable shapes. Okay, so there are different kinds of shapes of chloroplasts. So they can be cup shaped, okay, ribbon shaped. All right. So in algae, while it is discoidal in the higher plants. So if we talk about the algae, so in algae, chloroplast can be cup shaped or ribbon shaped, whereas in higher plant, it is discoidal in shape. Now this is an image showing you the transverse section of the leaf. So here you can see upper epidermis is present here. Then we have the lower epidermis. So this is the upper epidermis. This is the lower epidermis. And within the epidermis, what is present? Stomata. Okay. So these are the stomata. Okay. And you can see stoma is the opening of the stomata. All right. Then epidermis is covered by a thick cuticle which protects the leaves. Okay. Here also cuticle is present. Then we have the parenchyma cells. So these are the palisade parenchyma. Then we have the spongy parenchyma. These are the palisade mesophyll cell, or you can say these are the spongy mesophyll cells. So they are parenchymatous cells. Okay. Here you can see this is the vasculature system, xylem and the phloem. This forms the vasculature. Okay. Or the vascular system. So xylem, you know, they are involved in the transport of the water, and phloem, they are involved in the transport of the food material. Here you can see bundle sheath extension. These are the bundle sheath cells. Okay. Then we have the sclerenchyma cells here. Bundle sheath cells extension here again. These ones. Okay. And the vascular system is present in the center. Okay. So this is it. Image showing you the transverse section of the leaf. So again, I will summarize. The epidermis is present, upper epidermis and the lower epidermis. The epidermis is covered by the cuticle. Below the epidermis are present the palisade parenchyma cells. Then spongy parenchyma cells are present. So here we have already seen this palisade parenchyma cells, they contain very high number of chloroplasts. Some chloroplasts are also present in the spongy parenchyma. Okay. And then we have the vascular system in the center. So you have to remember all these terms. Now let's talk about the structure of the chloroplast. Okay. This is also very important here. Now the typical structure of the chloroplast is a double membranous structure. So chloroplast, it consists of two membranes, means it is a double membranous structure. Okay, and consists of grana and the stroma. So these are the two parts of the chloroplast. Let's first talk about the grana. What is grana? Okay. Now, grana, the plural form of the granum. Okay. So you can say granum is singular. Okay. And plural of granum is grana. Now, what is grana made up of? They are made up of stacks of structures known as thylakoids. Okay. So thylakoids are disc-shaped structure. Okay. So these are thylakoid. These are disc-shaped. And they are stacked over one another, means one is kept over the other. Okay, and this entire is known as a grana. Okay, and this single disc-shaped structure, this is known as thylakoid. All right. So grana, these are made up of stacks of the structures known as the thylakoid, which are small membranous discs, and they are 40 to 60 per cell. Now, grana, the number of within grana, the number of thylakoids per grana is 50 or more, and the chlorophyll molecules are found inside the thylakoid membrane, where they trap the solar energy in the form of small energy packets called photons or quanta. Okay, so the chlorophyll molecules, it is saying they are present inside the thylakoid membrane. So if someone asks you where is chlorophyll molecules, where are chlorophyll molecules present? They are present inside the thylakoid membrane. And what is the role of these chlorophyll molecules? They trap the solar energy, which is present in the form of photon or quanta. Now, the grana are interconnected to each other by a channel called as stroma lamellae. So I've already told you, these are grana. They are made up of stacks of thylakoid. Okay, and these are interconnected with the other grana. Okay, like this. So this is another grana, and this channel, this is known as the stroma lamellae. Okay, stroma lamellae also known as the Fred channel. The Fred channels are the gap between the stroma lamellae, okay, that are involved in the fixation, carbon dioxide correction. Now, let's talk about the stroma, second part of the chloroplast. So, stroma, it is a non-pigmented proteinaceous matrix. Okay, so it is a matrix, or you can say it is a semi-solid fluid. That's why it is known as matrix. It is a semi-solid fluid in which grana remains embedded. Okay, so grana, they are embedded in the stroma. And the stroma, it contains all the enzymes that are required for dark reaction, means for carbon dioxide fixation. Into what? Carbon dioxide fixation into carbohydrate molecules, which is glucose. Okay, so all the enzymes, okay, for carbon dioxide fixation, these are present in the stroma of the chloroplast. Now, this is the image showing you the structure of the chloroplast. Here you can say it is a double membranous structure, means it consists of two membranes. So these are the membranes of the chloroplast. And then here you can see grana are present here, granum thylakoids. Okay, you know the grana is made up of stacks of the thylakoid. Here the stroma thylakoids, which are interconnecting. These are interconnecting two grana, or they are interconnecting the thylakoids of the two grana. This is the stroma, which was the proteinaceous matrix or semi-solid fluid. Here some RNA is present. Okay, this is the granum entire. Okay, which is made up of stacks of what? thylakoids. They are made up of stacks of thylakoids. Here some starch is present, starch droplets, okay, or starch molecules. Here these are the Fritz membrane. Ribosomes are present, DNA. So chloroplast has also its own DNA. That's why it is known as semi-autonomous organisms, because it has its own DNA. It can synthesize its own proteins and enzymes. Okay, that's why it is known as semi-autonomous. Okay, because of the presence of this DNA. This is clear? I'll again summarize it. It is a double membranous structure, means it consists of two membranes. Then we have the granum, which is the stacks of the thylakoid. Here, stroma, which is the semi-solid fluid or the matrix. Stroma thylakoids, also known as the lamellar thylakoids. These interconnect the two thylakoids of the grana. Okay. Then here you can see the Fritz membrane. Starch molecules are present here. Ribosomes are present. DNA is also present, and some RNA is also present here. Now let's talk about the mechanism of the photosynthesis. This also we have briefly discussed, okay, in the beginning of this lecture. So I've already told you photosynthesis occurs in two phases. First is light reaction and second one is the dark reaction. Now let's talk about light reaction first. Now light reaction is also known as photochemical process. Okay, photo means light, chemical means the chemical molecules. So here what happens? The light energy is converted into what? Chemical energy. Light energy is converted into chemical energy. Now, light reaction was discovered by Robert Hill, and therefore light reaction is also known as Hill's reaction. Now, where does light reaction takes place? Light reaction takes place in the grana of the chloroplast. And what are the raw materials required, or what are the substrate required for the light reaction? Light is required, obviously, because it is light dependent. So light is required as well as water is required. Okay, water. Okay, why is water required? So there is a breakdown of water, which is known as photolysis of water. Means, so photo means light, lysis means breakdown. There is photolysis of water molecule, H2O. Okay, and this breakdown of the water, it releases protons as well as electrons. Okay, and oxygen is also released. Okay, here I'm writing molecular oxygen. So by the photolysis of the water, oxygen evolution takes place. Okay, and beside this, protons and electrons are also released, and these electrons, they take part in the electron transport chain. So water is very essential to carry out the photosynthesis. Okay, now regulation. How is the regulation of the light reaction done? So this process is regulated by the chlorophyll molecules. So what happens? The chlorophyll molecules, they absorb the light. Okay, and then they get excited and they release the electron. Suppose this is the chlorophyll molecule. It will absorb the incident light. So this is the light source here, which is usually the sun. Okay, this is the light source. This is the chlorophyll, suppose A molecule, and then it gets excited and then it releases the electrons, which takes part in the what? Electron transport chain. All right, this is a very brief image showing you the this is an image showing you the light reaction. So very briefly I've discussed light reaction. Now light reaction, it consists of three steps. First is the photoexcitation of the chlorophyll molecule. So this I've already told you. The chlorophyll molecule, they absorb the light and they are excited. So this is known as photoexcitation of the chlorophyll molecules. Now second one is the photolysis. This also I have told you, this is the breakdown of the water molecule. And third is the photophosphorylation. So what happens in photophosphorylation? There is a generation of ATP in the presence of light. That's why this process is known as photophosphorylation. The generation of ATP in the presence of light. Now let's discuss in detail what is the steps involved in the light reaction. So photoexcitation of the chlorophyll molecule. This is the first step. During this process, what happens? The chlorophyll molecule receives the sunlight in the form of small energy bundles, which are known as photons. And the chlorophyll molecule, it becomes excited and it reaches the higher energy level. So in this image, you can see this is the chlorophyll molecule. Here, they absorb the photons. And what happens? The chlorophyll molecule get excited and it releases the electron. So here you can see electron is released and the chlorophyll molecule, it attains the higher energy level. Electron is released and chlorophyll molecule is now said to be in excited state. Okay. It is said to be in excited state, means it become excited and it reach the higher energy level. This happens in the photoexcitation of the chlorophyll molecules. Now next is the photolysis of water, which is also known as breakdown of the water in the presence of sunlight. Now it is also known as the photooxidation of the water, and this takes place in the presence of manganese ion and the chloride ion. Okay, so for photolysis of water, these two ions are very important, manganese and the chloride ion. Apart from it, calcium ion is also required, but basically, mainly manganese ion and chloride ions are required to carry out the photolysis. So this is the reaction of the photolysis. Here, the water molecules, they are broken down in the presence of the light, and 4 hydrogen molecules are released, 4 electrons are released, and oxygen evolution takes place. And these electrons, they take part in the electron transport chain or electron transport system. Now, again, let's talk about photolysis. The oxygen is liberated as a byproduct, and the proton ions, they are used for the reduction of the NADP. So we have already discussed what were the products of the light reaction. It was ATP and NADPH2. How this NADPH2 is made? By the reduction of the NADP by the protons. So here 2 NADP plus it combines with 4 hydrogen atoms and it forms 2 NADPH2. And these products, both NADPH2 and ATP, these are utilized in the dark reaction for the synthesis of the carbohydrate molecules. Now third step was the photophosphorylation. So photophosphorylation, what happens? So during this process, ATP is produced in the presence of the light. Now, what is the site of photophosphorylation? It takes place in the quantasomes. Now, what are quantasomes? These are the particles which are found in the thylakoid membrane. Okay, and magnesium ion and inorganic phosphate, which is denoted by small ip, these are required to convert ADP into ATP. So ADP, adenosine diphosphate, this combines with the inorganic phosphate and it forms the ATP. Okay, so this is how the products of the light reaction are formed, ATP and NADPH2. Here, magnesium ion is required, so you can write here Mg2+. Okay, inorganic phosphate is required. So ADP is adenosine diphosphate, ATP is adenosine triphosphate. Now let's talk about the dark reaction. In dark reaction, what happens? Dark reaction is also known as the thermochemical reaction, or is also known as the biosynthetic phase. Here what happens? Synthesis of the carbohydrate molecules are taking place. Now, this dark reaction, these were discovered by Melvin Kelvin, okay, and Benson. So Kelvin and Benson, they discovered the dark reaction. So on the basis of their names, okay, or the basis of their discoverer, this dark reaction is also known as Kelvin cycle or Kelvin-Bensel cycle. Okay, so dark reaction is also known as the biosynthetic phase. It is also known as the thermochemical reaction. It is also known as the Kelvin cycle or Kelvin-Bensel cycle. Now, what is the site of dark reaction? Stroma. Okay, this we have already discussed. Stroma, it contains all the enzymes that are required for carrying out the Kelvin cycle, which is also known as the dark reaction. Now, what are the raw materials required for the dark reaction? So, they require carbon dioxide, NADPH2 and ATP. So, these are the product of what? These are the product of the light reaction. Okay, and enzymes are also required to carry out the Kelvin cycle. We'll talk about these enzymes. So one of the enzymes is Rubisco and other enzymes is PEP carboxylase. Now, how the regulation is done? So regulation of the dark reaction is done by the product of the light reaction and the enzymes which are involved in the Kelvin cycle. There are a lot of enzymes that are involved and there are a series of steps that are involved in the dark reaction, and all these reactions are enzymatically controlled and they require the products of the light reaction ATP and NADPH2. Clear? Now let's discuss about the steps that are involved in the dark reactions, or you can say steps that are involved in the Kelvin cycle or C3 cycle. So you know dark reaction. In dark reaction what happens? Kelvin cycle occurs. So these are the steps. First step is the carboxylation. In carboxylation means addition of carbon dioxide. Here what happens? There is carbon dioxide is captured by carbon dioxide acceptors. Okay, so carbon dioxide acceptors is RUBP in case of C3 plant, and it is phosphoenol pyruvate in case of C4 plants. Okay, so there are two kinds of plant, C3 plants and C4 plants. So in C3 plants, the carbon dioxide acceptor is RUBP, which is a 5-carbon compound, whereas in C4 plants, the carbon dioxide acceptor is a 3-carbon compound known as phosphoenol pyruvate. Okay, so now why they are called C3 plants? Because here the first stable product is a 3-carbon compound, and in C4 plant the first stable product is a 4-carbon compound. Okay, so the first stable product. Okay, stable word is very important because an intermediate unstable product is also formed. This is the first stable product, and in C3 plants, the first stable product is a 3-carbon compound. Okay, so now here two enzymes are involved. So in C3 plants, Rubisco is involved in carbon dioxide fixation, and in the C4 plant, the primary carbon dioxide fixation takes place with the help of an enzyme known as PEP carboxylase, also known as phosphoenol pyruvate carboxylase. So PEP is phosphoenol pyruvate. Okay, this is phosphoenol pyruvate. Now, second step is known as the synthesis. So in this step, reduction takes place. Okay, and there is formation of glucose. So glucose, which is the type of carbohydrate, is synthesized during the second step. Okay, so here what happens? Carbon dioxide is assimilated in this phase and is converted to the glucose. And there are a lot of enzymes present such as phosphatase and isomerases. Alright, so what is the function of phosphatases? Phosphatases help in the transfer of the phosphate group, whereas isomerases, they help in the rearrangement of the molecule within, okay, rearrangement of the atoms within a molecule. Okay, so phosphatase help in the transfer of phosphate group, and isomerase help in the rearrangement of atoms within a molecule. Okay, this is clear. Then the last step is regeneration of the RUBP. Okay, so RUBP, which is the primary receptor in the C3 plants. Okay, so here we are talking about the C3 cycle here actually. So these are the steps for the C3 cycle. Last step is the regeneration of the RUBP, which is very important for the continuation of the cycle. Now, what is the full form of RUBP? It is ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate. Okay, ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate. All right. Now, there are various factors that affect the rate of photosynthesis. So now let's discuss about the factors that affect the rate of the photosynthesis. Okay, so some of the factors are external and some are internal. All right, so what are the external factors? Light, temperature, water, oxygen. These are the external factors, and the chlorophyll is the internal factor, or you can also say plant associated factor, and rest are external factor or extrinsic factor. Okay, now let's discuss these factors one by one. First is the light. So normally plants utilize sunlight, but marine algae, they can perform photosynthesis even in the moonlight. So plants, they require the sunlight. Okay, because sunlight, it has high energy and it is adequate to excite the chlorophyll molecule. But moonlight, it doesn't have the adequate energy to excite the chlorophyll molecule in plants. But what happens in marine algae, they have certain photosynthetic pigments such as carotenoids and all. Okay, carotenoids, xanthophyll. Okay, and these pigment can absorb the moonlight or the light of with low energy, and then they can pass on it to the chlorophyll and they can do photosynthesis. All right, now plants can also perform photosynthesis in the artificial lights also. All right, this is clear. Now the highest rate of photosynthesis is seen in the red light and the minimum photosynthesis is seen in the green light. So green light is reflected by the leaves and the leaves appear green. So all the green light is reflected. That's why minimum photosynthesis occurs in the green light and highest rate of photosynthesis occurs in the red light. Okay. Now, very high light intensity can cause reduction in the rate of photosynthesis. Okay. Why there is a reduction in the rate of photosynthesis at very high light intensity? Because of the process of photooxidation. So the chlorophyll molecules, okay, they are oxidized in the presence of the light, which is known as photooxidation, and this results in the denaturation or degradation of the chlorophyll molecule. If the chlorophyll molecule is degraded, then what will happen? There will be no photosynthesis because chlorophyll absorbs the light, all right, and it gets excited. Then the electron takes part in the electron transport system, all right, and all the downstream processes take place. Clear? Now let's talk about the temperature. Now the optimum range, or you can say the rate of photosynthesis is maximum between 25 to 30 degrees Celsius. Okay, this is the optimum range, means here the maximum, or you can say the rate of photosynthesis is maximum. Okay, now between 10 to 40 degrees Celsius, photosynthesis can take place, but 25 to 30 degrees Celsius is the optimum range. Now what happens in some algae which are present in the hot springs? So there the temperature is very high. So they have certain adaptations and the enzymes, okay, they can tolerate high temperature. Okay, so their photosynthesis can also occur at 60 degrees Celsius to 70 degrees Celsius. So this is normal for them. Okay. Now let's talk about carbon dioxide. So it is the first limiting factor. Okay. So carbon dioxide is very important for the photosynthesis, and it also acts as a limiting factor. What is limiting factor? The factor on which the rate of photosynthesis depend. Okay. So you can say factor on which rate of photosynthesis depends. Alright, this is known as the limiting factor, and it is, or you can also say, when this factor carbon dioxide is present in the minimum amount, okay, then the rate of photosynthesis will also be minimum. Okay. Now, 0.03 to 0.1% of the atmospheric carbon dioxide is present. Okay. So 0.03 to 0.1% is present in the atmosphere. So at lower concentration of carbon dioxide, what happens? The rate of photosynthesis is proportional to the concentration of the carbon dioxide. Okay. So you can say at lower concentration of carbon dioxide, okay, the rate of photosynthesis, I am writing rate of photosynthesis is is directly proportional to the carbon dioxide concentration. Okay. Whereas above 0.9%, okay, if the atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration is above 0.9%, then the concentration of carbon dioxide is inversely proportional to the rate of photosynthesis. Means the photosynthesis will decrease. Okay. But between 0.1 to 0.9%, the photosynthesis rate is constant. Okay. This is clear. And this is known as the saturation point. So initially what happens? When you increase the concentration of the carbon dioxide, the rate of photosynthesis also increases. Okay. And then it becomes constant. Okay. That is known as the saturation point. And then further increase of carbon dioxide will lead to decrease in the rate of photosynthesis. Okay. Now, what is saturation point? The point at which, or you can say the concentration of carbon dioxide at which there is no further increase in photosynthesis. This is known as the saturation point. Now, oxygen acts as a competitive inhibitor of carbon dioxide. Now, what is a competitive inhibitor? That has structural similarity to the carbon dioxide. Okay, so competitive inhibitor has the structural similarity to the substrate. So here substrate is carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide, it binds to RUBP, okay, in the presence of the enzyme Rubisco. So if oxygen is present, then Rubisco will bind to, okay, so this happens in the presence of the enzyme Rubisco. Okay, so Rubisco, you can say RUBP binds to carbon dioxide in the presence of Rubisco. But what happens if oxygen is present in high concentration? Then in this case, what will happen? RUBP will bind to oxygen instead of carbon dioxide. Okay, so that's why oxygen acts as a competitive inhibitor of carbon dioxide. Over concentration of oxygen stops the photosynthesis. If the oxygen level is very high, then the photosynthesis will be inhibited. And this happens because of the process known as photorespiration. Okay, so photorespiration leads to the decrease in the photosynthetic rate. Okay, and photorespiration happens when the level of oxygen is very high. So in this case, Rubisco, you can say, binds to oxygen instead of carbon dioxide. So Rubisco has two activity. One is oxygenase activity, other is carboxylase activity. Okay, so in oxygenase activity, Rubisco binds to oxygen. In carboxylase activity, it binds to carbon dioxide. So if oxygen level is very high, Rubisco will bind to oxygen and it will carry out the process of photorespiration, which will lead to the inhibition of photosynthesis. Now chlorophyll, which is an internal factor, this is also very important. And the chlorophyll content is directly proportional to the rate of photosynthesis. This means higher the chlorophyll content, higher will be the rate of photosynthesis. Now, no photosynthesis occurs in the etiolated cells. Now, what are etiolated cells? Cells which are grown in absence of light. Okay, so these are grown in absence of the light. So, when the cells or the plant is grown in the absence of the light, then what happens? There will be no chlorophyll there. Okay, no chlorophyll synthesis occurs. Okay, and the plant will be pale in color, pale or white in color. Also, in variegated leaves are those leaves which have different colors. Okay, so they have different color within a same leaves. So in variegated leaves also, it occurs only at places where chlorophyll is present. It occurs means photosynthesis occurs only at places where chlorophyll is present. So chlorophyll is very important for the photosynthesis. Okay, so in variegated leaves, for example, croton. Croton has leaves which is green in color. So leaves are with patches. Some are green patches, some are pale colored patches. So the green colored patches, okay, they contain the chlorophyll, and only those patches will do the photosynthesis. Now, photosynthesis is born to the nature and to the human beings. Okay, why it is born to the nature? First of all, it helps in the evolution of oxygen. Okay, and photosynthesis also provide food, okay, which is consumed by the herbivores. Okay, and herbivores are then consumed by the carnivores. Okay, so food is consumed by the consumers such as human beings. Okay, now what is the significance of photosynthesis? Production of the food material, okay, and the atmospheric control and purification of the air. So, okay, so there is oxygen evolution during photosynthesis which help in the purification of the air, okay, and atmospheric control is also done, okay, by the exchange of the gases. So carbon dioxide is absorbed by the plants and oxygen is released. Okay, so this is the significance of photosynthesis. Okay, so all the organisms, they are dependent indirectly or directly on photosynthesis. Okay, now let's talk about some daily practice problems. Okay, so in this session, we'll be solving the multiple choice questions. Okay, so these are the objective questions, and within objective questions, we'll be studying the multiple choice questions. Here, the first question is, the raw material for photosynthesis options are carbon dioxide and oxygen, sunlight and carbon dioxide, water and chlorophyll, and carbon dioxide and water. So you know what are the substrate? Carbon dioxide, it reacts with water, and in the presence of sunlight and the chlorophyll, okay, what happens? A glucose molecule is produced, and along with it, what is oxygen evolution takes place, okay, and water is also generated. Okay, this is clear. So if you balance this equation, okay, here you can write this. So this is the balanced equation here. Okay, here the substrate are carbon dioxide and water. So what should be the answer here? Carbon dioxide and water are the substrate for the photosynthesis. Clear? Now, most of the photosynthesis, means 80% of the photosynthesis takes place on this earth, is carried out by, okay, so photosynthesis are carried out by the organisms that contain the chlorophyll, means they should be green in color. All right, the first option is green plants on land. Second option is algae present in the fresh water, algae found in the ocean, or algae present in the ocean and freshwater sources. Okay. Now, what is the correct answer here? Algae present in ocean as well as the freshwater sources. So plants, you must be a little bit confused here. Why algae is the major source of the oxygen evolution and the photosynthesis. So what happens? In the earth, we have 70% of the water. Okay, 70% of the earth is water. And we are talking about the algae which are present in the ocean. And so algae is present in huge amount. Algae. Okay, huge amount of algae is present in the water. And what happens? This algae has very large surface area and they can absorb the carbon dioxide present in the water. Okay, clear? The marine algae, okay, they can absorb the carbon dioxide present in the water and they can carry out the photosynthesis. And this algae is present in huge amount. There is large biomass of algae present. Okay, so they are the primary source of photosynthesis. Most of the photosynthesis is done by the algae and most of the oxygen evolution is also done by the algae. The next question, which of the following does not contain the digestive enzymes? Let's have a look at the options. First option is saliva, second option is bile, third option is gastric juice, and fourth option is intestinal juice. So saliva, it contains which enzyme? Ptyalin. Ptyalin is also known as salivary amylase. This helps in the digestion of what? Carbohydrates. Okay, if we talk about gastric juice, these also contain enzymes that helps in the digestion of carbohydrate, proteins and all. Okay, example is pepsin. Pepsin, which helps in the digestion of proteins. Intestinal juice. So this is secreted by the small and the large intestine. Okay, so intestinal juice is secreted by the intestinal gland which are present in the intestine. Now let's talk about bile. Okay, so bile doesn't contain any enzymes. It only consists of some salts, okay, and some pigments such as bilirubin and biliverdin. So what should be the answer? Bile. Bile doesn't contain any enzymes. So bile is secreted, by the liver. Okay, and it consists of some salts, some pigments, okay, bilirubin and biliverdin, but it doesn't contain any enzymes. The next question is, plants are green in color. So this is a very simple question. They are green in color. What are the options? They absorb the green light only. They reflect green light. They absorb the green light but reflect all the other lights, and none of the above are correct. What should be the answer to this question? Answer is option B. They reflect the green light. So, in physics, you must have studied when any light is reflected from the substance that is perceived by the eye, and then you can see that object. So the leaves, they appear green because they reflect the green light and they absorb the rest of the lights. That's why the leaf appear green. Okay, and the green color is due to the presence of the chlorophyll, which is a green color pigment. So it reflects the green light. Now, next question is, what is the full form of NADP? Okay, NADP is a coenzyme. The options are nicotinamide dinucleotide phosphate, nicotine adenine dinucleotide phosphate. Option C is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate, and option D is none of the above. So here the correct answer is option number C, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. This is the full form of NADP. Okay. The next question is, wavelength of the visible light is. So here we are talking about the visible light or the visible spectra. All right. Now let's have a look at the options. Option A is 200 to 400 nanometer. Option B 400 to 700 nanometer. Option C 700 to 900 nanometer, and option D 100 to 200 nanometer. Okay, so to answer this question, first let's understand this image. So this is an image showing you the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, here you can see this is the visible region, and visible region consists of 7 colors. It is made up of 7 colors which together make this VIBGYOR. This is violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. Okay. And what is the range of this visible spectra or the visible region? It is, okay, you can say around 400 to 700 nanometer. Okay. And this visible region is present between the UV and the infrared region. So what should be the answer here? 400 to 700 nanometer. And what is, how you can define the visible region? It is the region which is perceived by the human eye. Means the humans can see, okay, in this range or in this region of electromagnetic spectrum. Next question is, the presence of sugar in onion leaves can be tested by, okay. Now the options is iodine test. Okay. Second is lime water. Third is copper sulfate solution. And fourth is Benedict solution. So iodine, okay, this is used for testing the starch. Okay. Lime water, this is used for testing the carbon dioxide present in the exhaled air. Okay. So when we exhale, we release carbon dioxide. Okay. So lime water is useful for the testing of the carbon dioxide. Copper sulfate solution, this is used to test the presence of the proteins. And Benedict solution is used to test the presence of the reducing sugar. So what is special about reducing sugars? So these reducing sugar, they contain either the aldehyde group CHO or they contain the ketone group, which is the CO group. Okay. So CHO is an aldehyde group and CO is a ketone group. So an aldehyde containing sugar is glucose and a ketone containing sugar is fructose. Okay. So the onion leaves, they contain which kind of sugar? They contain reducing sugar such as glucose and fructose, which can be tested by Benedict solution. So the answer is Benedict solution. The next question is, the chemical reaction takes place during dark reaction of photosynthesis is, okay, so we are talking about the dark reaction here, which is involved in the synthesis of the glucose molecule. You can say dark reaction, you can also say it the Kelvin cycle or the C3 cycle. Now, option A is photolysis, means breakdown of the water. Second is hydrolysis. Okay, again, so what is the difference between photolysis and hydrolysis? Photolysis is the breakdown of the water in the presence of light. Hydrolysis is just breakdown of the, you can say, chemical breakdown of the water. Next is carbon dioxide is bonded with RuBp. So what happens during the C3 cycle? Carbon dioxide, it binds with RuBp. So RuBp, ribulose 1,5-bis phosphate, which is a 5-carbon compound. Okay, and carbon dioxide contains 1 carbon. So these combine together to form the first stable product known as phosphoglyceric acid, which is a 3-carbon compound. Okay, clear? This is phosphoglyceric acid. Option number D is nitrogen fixation. So what should be the answer here? Option number C, carbon dioxide is bonded with the RuBp. So this is the first step of the Kelvin cycle. And after that, rest of the steps are continued. And this results in the formation of the glucose molecule. Now, next question is, dark reaction and light reaction of photosynthesis takes place in, so this is very straightforward question. Option A is stroma and grana of the chloroplast, grana and the stroma of the chloroplast. Option C is grana only. Option D is stroma. So what is the answer? Stroma and the grana of the chloroplast. So in stroma, what takes place? The dark reaction. Dark reaction is also known as biosynthetic reaction, okay, or the C3 cycle or the Kelvin cycle takes place during the dark reaction. So that takes place in the stroma where all the enzymes are present. So all the enzymes for the Kelvin cycle or the dark reactions are present in the stroma, whereas in grana, what happens? The light reaction takes place here in the grana. So grana, they are made up of what? They are made up of stacks of thylakoids. Okay. And what happens? This thylakoid consists of what? The chlorophyll molecules. Chlorophyll molecules are the pigments, photosynthetic pigments that absorb the light. So light reaction takes place in the grana. So here I've shown you the structure of the chloroplast. Here you can see it consists of two membranes. Okay, here you can see the grana, which is made up of the thylakoid. Okay, so this each one is known as the thylakoid, and the entire stack of the thylakoids is known as the grana. Here you can see the stroma, where dark reaction takes place. These are the ribosomes. Here you can see the starch granules and some lipid droplets. Okay, so here this is the grana here, this entire, which is made up of stacks of thylakoid where light reaction takes place. Next question is carbon dioxide acceptor during the dark reaction of photosynthesis is. Okay, so let's have a look at the options. RUBP, phosphoenol pyruvate, NADPH, or ATP. So you already know what are the products of the light reaction, NADPH2 and ADP. Okay, so these are not the correct answer here. Now, if we talk about the C3 plants, here what happens? Carbon dioxide is accepted by RUBP. So this question is related to C3 plants. Okay. And what happens in C3 plant? Carbon dioxide is, what is the primary receptor of carbon dioxide? RUBP, ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate. So what is the answer here? Answer number A. Option number A is the correct answer here. RUBP. RUBP accepts the carbon dioxide and it changes into two molecules of phosphoglyceric acid. So this happens during the C3 cycle or the Kelvin cycle. Clear? Now this was the end of this session. We will start with the rest of the topics in the next session. Thank you very much.